What's up, guys? Ricky here. Do you love Most Valuable Podcasts? And are you like myself where things that you like, you just have to let people know because they've got to be on your t-shirt at all times? If you do, you're in luck because we got Most Valuable Podcast t-shirts. You've probably seen myself, Dave, Mark, Sean, Brandon. You might have seen us wearing these t-shirts in videos. The good thing is now you can get your hands on one too. How do you do so? First off, send us an email, mostvaluablepodcast@gmail.com. Give us your name, your size, your address. We will then send you an invoice through Square. That's how you'll pay for it, $22 per shirt. And then after we get the money, we will send you a great Most Valuable Podcast t-shirt for you to wear so you can tell everybody that you love listening to Most Valuable Podcast. So go check it out. The directions are also in the description. What are you waiting for? We got the shirts just for you. But Brandon, let's move on into 6 through 15. And for our listeners at home, we'll read right through them. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see them. Brandon, I'm going to let you go first. Take us through 15 through 6 for your big board.
All right, starting at 15, wide receiver out of SMU, Cortland Sutton. At 14, offensive tackle from Oklahoma, Orlando Brown Jr. At 13, I had Mo Hurst, defensive lineman out of Michigan.
Friend of the show.
At 12, I had Calvin Ridley, wide receiver, Alabama. At 11, I had a Roquan Smith, linebacker from Georgia. At 10, I had James Washington, wide receiver from Oklahoma State. At 9, I had Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Oklahoma. At 8, I had Arden Key, defensive end, LSU. At 7, I had Quentin Nelson, offensive guard, Notre Dame. And at 6, I had Derwin James, safety, FSU.
And for you and I, there are a few repeat guys here for 15 through 16. As we get up, you're going to have that. But for my number 15, starting it off, inside linebacker from Alabama, Rashaan Evans. Then you've got this name I was like, how did Brandon say it? I'm going to let you say it. The offensive tackle from Notre Dame, Mike McGlinchey. I said that right? I'm trying to learn these names so that we don't get hammered in the comment section.
We probably still said one wrong.
Outside linebacker from Virginia Tech, Tremaine Edmonds. Then at number 12, the defensive end and outside linebacker from LSU, Arden Key. Number 11, wide receiver from Alabama, Calvin Ridley. Then we've got at number 10, the defensive end from Clemson. We got Chillin, right? Chillin? Am I saying that right? Chillin Farrell?
No, I said Clellan.
Clellan Farrell. I'm trying to say these right. If I'm saying them wrong, let me know down below in the description.
Chillin? Did you actually say Chillin?
I said Chillin.
Chillin Farrell?
Chillin Farrell.
Where do you see the H?
Then at number 9, Josh Allen, quarterback from Wyoming. Then at number 8, we've got Harold Landry, who we talked about in the last segment, from Boston College. Number 7, Derwin James, a safety from Florida State. And then Quentin Nelson, the offensive guard from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But Brandon, the guy I want to focus on first here, name that I'm not going to screw up because it's so easy to say, LSU's Arden Key. To you, why'd you put him at 8? What put you to have him at 8? Barring everything, he's a guy that missed some spring ball, announced in the spring he's coming back, missed the beginning of the season with a shoulder injury, missed the last 2 games with a knee injury. What went through your thought process to put Arden Key at 8?
Well, I think that he's outside of the injuries, which it's something that's holding him down because if he didn't have the injuries and multiple injuries, I probably would have had him up in the top 5. I mean, I think that he's that good. He brings a whole lot to a defense. He's a physical force. I mean, the guy is really, really, really good. And I say that because it's his physicality. To me, it's his physicality that he's able to bring to a team, to a squad. And it's the energy. It's physicality and energy for me with Arden Key. There's a lot of good things there, and those are just 2 of them.
Yeah, well, to me, I look back, and I said to you before we started today, there was a segment that we had, and this was all the way back 5 months ago. I don't remember why you missed, but there was a time where you missed. I did the podcast on my own, and I discussed the topic of, will Arden Key be the best defensive player in this draft field? That question is answered. No, he is not. There are a few defensive guys that both you and I have ahead of Arden Key, but to me, it all comes down to, does he have the skills to be a phenomenal pass rusher for an NFL team? Yes, he does. However, I look at the injuries, and to me, I looked at it because you could say, well, Ricky, Harold Landry has a ankle injury that you talked about in the last segment, yet you don't have him that low. You have him at 8. You have Arden Key all the way at 12. To me, whenever you get towards the knee, whenever you say knee injury, I get a little bit like an ankle injury. I go, okay, it's an injury, but you know what? We can get through that. A knee injury, though, especially with how much with football, especially driving, you need your knees. And once you injure the knee once, depending on what you do, re-injury is high in some cases. That's the thing that scares me right now. And it's not quite of a Connor Williams discussion of, wow, you sprained your MCL and your PCL, but still it's like, okay, you banged up your shoulder, you banged up your knee. I'm going to have some injury questions for you when we get to the NFL Combine.
Yeah, I think that those are definitely things that you need to look at. And as I said before, if you went back and watch those where I talked about the injuries and how me personally, if I'm a general manager, a coach, an owner, I'm asking those questions and I'm finding out, is this player healthy? Are they going to be healthy? Is this something that's really going to hold them back? And not necessarily be a career ender, not at all.
Yeah.
But is this going to be a definite career effector? Where they're just not going to be able to play as well at the level. Are they ever going to be able to play 100%, basically? And those are things that I would need to look at. And if the answer is yes, after finding out, talking to doctors, talking to the players, I said before, then okay, we can move on. But I think another thing is that Key had that pinky finger problem, to end the season where he missed the last 2 games. Those are all things that kind of add up. So those are his weaknesses. Injuries, I think, are his weaknesses. But his ability to shed blockers and really get around the edge, I think those are sometimes next to none. And I know, obviously, people are going, well, certainly it's next to somebody because you have other people ahead of him or very close to him that you've talked highly of. So that's true. But when you've seen some of his games, when he is healthy, when you look at when he had 11 sacks in a season and he was healthy, you go, wow, this guy is good. He's freakishly good. And those are the things that have him at number 8 for me, and why I think that a lot of teams will be looking at him high or higher on a board, even due to those injuries, because that freakish talent is there.
Well, and the thing to me that, and this is the last thing I'll say about Arden Key before we move on, is if he was 100% healthy, I'd have him in my top 5, kind of like what you said earlier. And I look at a guy who had done well this year, who we'll talk about later in the podcast, Bradley Chubb from North Carolina State. The way he is and where he is on our big boards, I look at him and go, that's where Arden Key should be if he didn't have the injury questions. But I want to move on, offensive side of the football, mainly the wide receiver position. And I want to start and use Calvin Ridley as the kind of focal point, because when you look at our 2 big boards, you have a few wide receivers. You've got Sutton, you've got Washington from SMU and Oklahoma State. You also have Ridley. You also have Ridley as your second best wide receiver. You have Washington ranked above him by 2 spots. I want to ask you this first. What went into that process to put James Washington at 10, Calvin Ridley at 12?
The reason that I did that is if you take a look at it, each game, and again, I know that it's different. It's different conferences and everything like that. But when you
different
look
offensive systems too,
exactly. But when you look at it, both guys are speedsters and burners and are big play guys. But when you look at it too, James Washington, he's got a lot of games where he's got 6, 5, 6, 9, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8 in receptions. And he's got a ton of games where he's got over 100 yards, some games over 200 yards, and lots of touchdowns. 12 touchdowns on the season this year, with 20.6 being yards per reception. Looking at Calvin Ridley's, I still think he's a good wide receiver. I think he's a good talent. But I think that Calvin Ridley is maybe not quite at the level where Washington was. And when I talked earlier, too, in the last segment that we did, I talked about how the new theme for the NFL seems to be going towards that 6'5", 6'6" kind of guy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe James Washington is that 6'5" guy.
James Washington, I'm looking.
Excuse me. He's not. He's 6'1".
He's 6 foot.
So excuse me, he's 6'1".
Okay.
So that's completely wrong on my end. I was completely thinking that he was 6'5". But
then he's the same height as Calvin Ridley too.
But I just see him as I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I really thought he was 6'5". But I just think that he's a guy that was used more of his volume was there more. Whereas Ridley, there was a lot of 3, 4, 3, 2. Where he's used, he's that one guy that he's going to be that boomer bust on your fantasy team where he gets a catch for 80 yards and a touchdown, or he doesn't.
This is one where I feel like Calvin Ridley, to me, obviously is the number one wide receiver. Of course he is. He's the only wide receiver on my big board. Spoiler alert, there's none in the top 5 for me. The thing I like about Calvin Ridley, though, few things. 1, his competitiveness. 2, this is a guy in the open field could be a nightmare. Maybe if you bulk up a little bit, obviously you always got to from college to the NFL, but could be a nightmare to tackle in the open field and could be a quality either guy on the outside they use over the middle or a slot guy because you already have wide receivers. There is one, and I know we weren't going to talk teams in this with the NFL, but I have to bring this up with Calvin Ridley. You know what team, which could be in the top 5 for the draft, that if Calvin Ridley's there, which he'll probably be, I take him? The Chicago Bears. Like, that is, to me, Calvin Ridley's a guy where he can be that number one for a team, whether it's outside over the middle, outside going deep, or a guy that, hey, we've got 2 wide receivers, let's put him in the slot, and he can be that guy in the slot for us. Not the tallest guy, but neither of these 2 that we're talking about are. And it's going to be interesting because, like I was talking to you as we were coming in today, this wide receiver class, there's just something missing from past classes to where I feel like there have been, in the last 2-3 years, it's been like we've had these 2 guys where it's like, which wide receiver do you want? Which one's going to go at the top of the board when it comes to the NFL draft? But this year it's kind of like, yeah, Calvin Ridley's the big name, but then it's like there's no big names other than Calvin Ridley with this wide receiver class.
Yeah, so the guy that I was thinking of was Courtland Sutton. So he's he's at 6'4", and he was the third
on your big board.
The third wide receiver that I have on the big board. But with Calvin Ridley, the style that he would play, I feel like he would be much more of a slot guy when you're in the NFL. He's not going to be. I would not see him as being one of the guys shifted all the way to the outside because that's just not him. He's certainly going to be more of a slot kind of possession wide receiver, I believe, who can break off that big play. And who can do that, who does that really well in the NFL, Ricky, is Golden Tate for the Detroit Lions. I think he does a great job of doing that. Golden Tate is not usually the guy that you're going to see speeding down the field on a deep route. That's usually your Marvin Jones to get to the NFL reference. But can Golden Tate go deep, go long, catch a deep pass, and make it go for a lot of yards, touchdown? Yes, he can. So I think that's where Calvin Ridley is very, very good and will be very good. And no, this year I think you're right. We haven't had that flashy wide receiver where you're like, wow, They're putting up. They've had 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns, just about every season. But I still think that the wide receivers that we have are quality coming into this. And then you look at Cortland Sutton being from SMU, and obviously SMU, 7-5 this year, nothing extremely special, but he's a guy on their team who I think has done well. He's produced well, and he's got the athleticism, the ability, certainly the size to be a good NFL wide receiver. So that's where I put him. But I like James Washington because of the fact that he's got extremely good athletic ability. He is a guy who can move it down the field. He had a great quarterback in Mason Rudolph, but big plays happened almost every single week with him. He was having 100 yards and a touchdown, 100 yards and a touchdown, and he was consistent with that. So he was able to get open, make big plays, has the athleticism to do that. That's why I see him ahead of Ridley just a bit. But again, the size at 6'1", which I had mixed up and used the wrong reference, but it's not your typical NFL height because, again, it's going more 6'3" to 6'5"
Like we're saying, bigger wide receivers.
But you can still be successful at 6'1" in the NFL as a wide receiver.
Well, and this is the last thing I'll say about wide receivers before we move on, is out of the last 3 years, 2 of them we've had that big too. 2015 was the Amari Cooper, Kevin White, Devonta Parker draft. Then he had Nelson Aguilar, where it was like, huh? Nelson Aguilar? To the Eagles? And then obviously last year was who you want, Corey Davis or Mike Williams. That was your big 2.
But again, let me just say really quickly is that you say your big 2. Now, Amari Cooper has worked out really well. Kevin White has not worked out. Nelson Aguilar is just now this year working out for the Eagles. Corey Davis, they're trying to figure out if he's going to work out there in Tennessee. And Mike Williams has been injured, and they're going to try and find out if he's going to turn into anything for the Chargers. So maybe you don't need that big name.
And that's like I was going to get into. I could see this being more of like 2016, where Corey Coleman was our first one, but he went at 15. But then 21 through 23, Will Fuller, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell. So we had wide receivers towards the later part. And maybe this isn't the draft. We get wide receivers in the top 10 towards the top of the NFL draft. But I want to move on. Got to talk. We always talk about them. Got to talk quarterbacks. We got 2 big ones here. And 2 that, one is, it's like how much potential are you going to put into it when you draft him? And that's Josh Allen. Didn't have a great season this year, however, had a decent season, has a lot of potential. And then on the other side, you have Baker Mayfield, who had arguably one of the high-profile seasons this year, but has some questions. Some of them may be drawn because of his own doing in a little bit in some ways. But at number 9, both you and I had Josh Allen, you had Baker Mayfield. What with Mayfield made you put him at number 9? Because remember, I had him all the way at 22.
I think he's just that talented. And watching this game this past weekend against TCU, it did it for me. It did it for me because
you texted me, and you were very high on Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma in general.
Yes.
You're like, they're my favorite. They're my favorite to win. And Clemson and then had already not played.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I didn't say they were my favorite to win, but I said I think they have to be the favorite right now.
Yeah,
they were the first ones that we knew that were going to be in, and we didn't know nothing else had happened. But Baker Mayfield, one of the things that really kind of did it for me was when he had that 50-some yard run. He was able to not only extend the play, but then make it go for 50-some yards. And he showed off his athletic ability, his speed. That's not something that every single quarterback can do. We saw Alex Smith just this past weekend run for 70 yards on one play. that's a lot. That brings a lot, especially when you're a quarterback that is a pocket quarterback, that you're going to hang in the pocket. You're a passing quarterback. You're not the Lamar Jackson. You're not the RG3, and you're able to go and do that when need be. He's just got the skills. He's got the talent. I know coming into this season, after everything that Oklahoma lost, you and I sat here. We talked about them, and I know I certainly said something probably along the lines of, I don't know if Oklahoma is going to be as good. Certainly, I didn't think they were going to be as good because I thought Oklahoma State was going to beat them and actually go undefeated. That was funny. But I think that Baker Mayfield made everyone else around him better. Everyone else around him better. It helped the running game with Oklahoma. They were really good with the running game this season. I think that's partially because of Baker Mayfield, because of how good he is at the quarterback position. He made his wide receivers around him better. He turned Mark Andrews into a great tight end. Not to say that Mark Andrews wasn't already, but I mean, they developed a great rapport, and now Andrews, I think, is probably on some people's draft boards that wasn't there before. It's certainly not first round, I don't think. But that's why I like Baker Mayfield the most at this point. And when I say the most, we haven't gotten to our top yet. But that's why I like him at this point in the draft. That's why I like him better than a Lamar Jackson. I just think Baker Mayfield has the skills. He has the athleticism. He has, honestly, he has the vision, the arm, everything I think like that comes with Baker Mayfield. If people want to say, how's he going to be off the field? Again, something else you have to look into, something else you have to make sure that he is going to be focused on football, which I do believe that he would be. But to me, he's got it. He's got it all.
Well, and for me, I'm on the other side of it. I have Josh Allen up here, and the thing with Josh Allen, the reason why I have him, because I was flipping on Josh Allen. I originally had him at 11, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to have him just out of the top 10. Then I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to have him just in the top 10 at 9. And the reason being is when it comes to Josh Allen, yes, he's a quarterback that can sling it, and he's super raw. Like, he's not a guy that, he's not going to be like Darnold and Rosen, especially a guy like Rosen is what I look at. Because Rosen right now could step into the NFL, be your starting quarterback day one, and you're fine with that. Like, Darnold, there's still some questions of, like, should he stay another year in college? Yes, his ceiling is higher, but do you have the coaching staff to get him there? Baker Mayfield, that's the question. But Josh Allen, it's just, he's a lump of clay to me. And can you mold him into what you want? And I mean, when you look at the numbers for Josh Allen, they're not there. I mean, with this year, under 60% completion, he had half as many yards as he did last year. Now, he did play 4 less games. He did have an injury this year where he had a sprained AC joint in his shoulder. He's hoping to come back for the Idaho Potato Bowl, where part of me is just going, sit out. Just sit out that game. Like, it doesn't mean anything for you to play that game. However, there is that little voice in the back of my head that's like, no, if you play that game and play well, it could help your draft stock. But I think shoulder injury, you missed the last 2. Just sit out, show us what you got in pro days and at the combine. And I feel like some NFL team is going to take a stab at Allen. And I mean, when I look at it, I almost compare it to, the numbers are obviously a lot different, but I think back to Aaron Rodgers when he came out. And the reason why is Aaron Rodgers was a guy, everyone had questions about Aaron Rodgers. Fundamentals. Like, I'm reading stuff here on old scouting reports, and there's one here that at the top goes, you start questioning everything from where you worked out to how hard you worked to the people you hung around with, and leaving college. It's very humbling. You can use that with Baker Mayfield as well. It's just funny where these guys will end up. A guy like Baker Mayfield, he could step into, I kind of agree with Rick Neuheisel. He could step into a job like Cleveland and have the attitude to say, I'm going to turn around the Cleveland Browns. Do I necessarily think he'll do that? No. but he could do that. Where Josh Allen's a guy where it's like, you know what? Go to the New York Giants. Go to a Pittsburgh Steelers. Go to a team that has a quarterback that is maybe 3 years out like Brett Favre was, and develop within those 3 years and then step into that starting job. So that's really the yin and yang with it. Baker Mayfield could step in day one. Josh Allen, I think, needs to work with the NFL coaching to get up there. Last guy I want to mention very briefly.
I want to mention Josh Allen. I am not impressed with him. I'm not. I think that his 2016 season with Wyoming, that was great. I mean, it was a really good season. The 28 touchdowns, the 15 interceptions. He showed us a whole lot. But this past year, I mean, he couldn't even get to 2,000 yards. I know there were some injuries. He missed a couple of games. Couldn't even get to 2,000 yards. Had 13 TDs, 6 interceptions. When you take such a step backwards like that, for me, what's going on?
And that's the thing. That is what I look at. Where is he going to blow people's minds off the first year? No. But get him working with those NFL coaches. Get him working with NFL talent, because there's a difference between, I'm going to compare it to Carson Wentz. There's a difference between Wentz and Josh Allen, both coming from the lower side, the FCS schools of, you know what, this is what it is, where Carson Wentz, he's out there, he makes everyone else better. Whereas Josh Allen, it's like, you know, he didn't have necessarily the same talent around him. If he had the, not knocking Wyoming, but if he had Power 5 coaching and Power 5 talent, would the numbers have been different? And it's all about what he will able to do with NFL coaching. But this is where you guys come in. You might notice a jump cut. We were going to talk about Derwin James, but after a little discussion, Brandon and I thought to nix it. So this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below. What do you think of our 6 through 15? The discussion we had, Arden Key, the quarterbacks, wide receivers. You guys let us know what you guys have down below in the comment section.